Okay, so we are live. Hi, Ed. Welcome to Venture with Grace.
Hey, Grace. Thanks for having me.
To start off the show, I would love for the audience to get to know you a little bit more. So, after listening to some of your podcasts, so you started your venture career in 1996, I believe, and then
Yeah.
now you've been like on the Midas list, and then you're like, a lot of my guests that you're like one of the most like amazing investors in the infrastructure dev tool space. So I'm like so glad to be here. So I would love for the audience to learn more about your journey on how do you kind of develop your own path in the venture ecosystem. And yeah, we'll go from there. Maybe
All
like
right.
some core lessons there.
All right. Well, I'll give you the short and dirty version. So I started my venture career in 1996 out of New York. At the time where there wasn't really any New York investing at all. It was all in the Valley. And prior to that, I'd been at JP Morgan working in their investment management group as an analyst. And my job was in the structured derivatives group. And we were taking Excel-based trading models, inputting data, and then creating some global asset allocation strategy around it. And over time, my colleague and I, this guy, Jeff Grills, started learning Visual Basic and started creating macros. So it got to the point where in a couple of months, we started hitting a button and then the machine just ran for a couple of hours and it'll give us the answer. And I remember one day, our investment manager said, "Hey, you guys are doing this. I don't know what you guys are doing. You're going for long lunches. You're asking for more work." And we showed them. And she said, "Hey, can you help us work with these software developers to turn this into a real-time trading model? And we're going to use C++, live data feeds from Reuters. And we would love you to kind of be like the software business QA." And so I downloaded Mosaic browser in 95 and that was it. I was hooked. I was like, I got to be a VC. This is so cool. The world is going to change. And, I got lucky. I joined a venture fund in 1996 out of New York, which was funded by the New York City government. And then I helped start a venture fund called Dawn Treader Ventures with a guy named Bob Lusson, who was probably the only angel on the East Coast at the time. He probably put, significant double-digit millions into startups on his own. And he and I started a fund called Dawn Treader, and that was 1998. And fast forward, here I am. And the one thing I would like to say is that you always had to find a niche back then. I mean, back in the day when I was trying to pursue this world in venture, there's only one path. It was you go to Silicon Valley. In order to go to Silicon Valley, you have to go to HBS or Stanford. And before that, you're either an engineer or a product manager or something like that. And so, I feel very fortunate. I had the opportunity to learn and try to build something new. And the coolest thing with Bob when we started Dawn Treader was he had this vision that I aligned with, which was let's bring the world of Silicon Valley investing to New York. And what that meant was let's focus not on spreadsheets, but on people, product, and markets. And then Bob said, "You know what, Ed, the other thing I want to bring to the table is the ability to talk to the Fortune 500. And he was the global head of the investment bank at Smith Barney. Prior to that, he was vice chairman of Morgan Stanley. He had tons of relationships. So he'd bring me into the room with some of the CEOs of very large companies, and I would network with their technical folks, talking about the internet back in the mid 90s. And so that was kind of the niche. That was how I learned about infra, talking to the buyers, seeing how important they were in the process. And that's something that we've capitalized on moving all the way forward to where we are at Boldstart.
Okay, I love that. Like, I love like you were talking to the infrastructure buyers. So first of all, like I have a couple questions there. Like one thing is like, what is the equivalent of today kind of look like to find your own niche? And I feel like you also talk about this on like a many other podcasts about like being the first like founder like I guess like a first fund to back the first like I don't know like to put the first check into like these people who are solving difficult like I guess like technical problems or like just like engineers in general. So I feel like there's so many people that are doing this right now. Like how would you approach venture differently if you're starting out today? Like what niche would you pick? Since I feel like the dev tool is not a niche anymore. It's kind of like especially this year with the help of AI, like everyone's investing in like B2B SaaS, like infrastructure, dev tool.
By
How
the
do
way,
you like
I think it's funny that you say that because I think I mentioned to you, I was like, hey, just to let you know, if you look at our website, it doesn't say, dev first, infra, and SaaS. We just say, finding bold technical founders reinventing the enterprise stack, right? Because the world is changing again. And when we started doing this dev tools thing, no one was really interested. Hey, you can't make money from dev tools, you can't take it public. Now there are honestly way too many of them, right? And we've done a lot less of those, even though we do have an expertise there, and we're trying to be very specific about how we pick and choose. Like, for example, Guy Pajarni, who's the founder and former CEO of Snyk, we partnered with him for a third time. And he started a new company called Tesla.io, which is going after we'll call it the AI native software development space. And all I can tell you is that for us, it wasn't an incremental idea. It was an amazing founder that we've partnered with previously. And, basically what he says is that, look, every tool out there today is all about turbocharging an existing workflow. He's like, how about we reinvent the whole thing? And that's what I'll leave you with now until you launch it. But if I were an individual, the first thing you have to be is absolutely curious. You have to be curious, and you've got to be really excited and passionate about kind of whatever idea it is. And you should probably geek out. Like, for example, I knew when I first started kind of doing infra investing that I wasn't kind of living and breathing and eating the infrastructure every day. So frankly, when we started Dawn Treader, I literally was the IT administrator. I was the exchange administrator. I set up our BlackBerry Research in Motion. I had the pager on me. I went into the bowels of this stuff. I even set up our Nortel voice cards and got all that set up, right? So to geek out, right? All this stuff, there's basic primitives around it. And so you have to learn. Fast forward, even in the last, I think 6-7 years ago, I was doing Python courses on my own. Not because I thought I'd be a great Python developer, but because I feel like in order to dive deep into something, you need to know enough to be dangerous. How does this work? How does it fit in the IDE? How does that flow work? And so I would just say for anyone, pick an area. Look, at today's world, I'd probably look at kind of the AI space and start, grabbing an API, start training on some data, and start building some of my own stuff and just experience what that feels like, right? And I think, the problem is, I'll tell you, Grace, is that VC is a real industry now. It's a real asset class. When I started back in 96, it was kind of an open book. And I think the internet, for me, back in 96 or 98, I remember I was invited to a room with one of the largest, we'll call it buyout shops. And Bob goes to me. He's like, hey, Ed, explain to these guys what the internet is. And I remember how nervous I had this whole imposter syndrome and everything else. And these were very successful, legendary investors. And I had the room for about an hour and a half. And Bob goes, this is where being young is an advantage. The last time I saw being young as an advantage was in the crypto infrastructure space. When crypto came around, it was like, hey, being young and crazy and stupid is an advantage. I think right now we have another platform shift happening. And I think that this platform shift, we'll call it the Gen AI platform shift versus the AI platform shift, because I truly believe that we had our first AI moment, which was more machine learning and classification and everything else back in 2017, 2018. But let's just say this new Gen AI shift, I would probably say, hey, how do I look at this technology and how do I turbocharge existing platforms and processes? And then the question is what can exist today with the technology that we have that couldn't exist before? I don't know what that is. I think there's some really bright founders that are come and tell us. And that's what I really want to see, who's going to come in and change the enterprise landscape like that.
I love it. So basically you're giving some, I feel like from our 8 minutes conversation, I've learned 2 things. One thing is talking to all the buyers in the industry that you want to kind of dive deep into, kind of building that network out there. And then the other part is actually building things yourself in the developer world to kind of go through the journey so you can kind of identify the problem or feeling the process essentially. And I wonder, since back then you were pretty I guess technical early on in the finance world, what would you, so I guess you just mentioned about if you were starting out today, you would build some sort of AI tools. From a fund level, are you planning on building any tools yourself in the AI, or basically AI tools to help finding better deals and everything? So I've seen a lot of investors build kind of LinkedIn scripper to script whoever left a top AI company. Is that the best way to go? Because I kind of feel that's, I don't know, if everyone's doing it, would that be effective?
Honestly, I don't think that's that much of an advantage because everyone is doing it and has already been doing it. Look, I've been playing around with it. I have my Substack, www.what'shot.it.vc, and I've played around with kind of training my own, Ask Ed kind of, bot and stuff, and fine tuning in, playing around with it. So that's been fun. But honestly, I can just subscribe to a data source and grab that, right? I don't need to kind of build that myself. That's a commodity. I think if anything, Grace, in this world of AI, whether it be enterprise sales or venture capital or anything else, I truly believe that the human relationship is going to be even more important than ever, right? Let's just say that now, when you change your bio to stealth or something else, right? 1,000 VCs will ping you, because I literally was just with the founder last week. He said, I changed my bio. 75 people had reached out. Everyone, the who's who reached out. It's probably like an analyst using a partner's name and just reaching out on LinkedIn. And think about this. So let's just say anything you get is not going to be proprietary. So how do you stand out in a sea of everybody's, right? And I think the personal relationship is going to matter, and how you think about it and your positioning. And so, and that's the way it is with enterprise sales. I've been writing a lot about that as well. I was joking. I always joke and say, hey, now that we live in a world awash with AI spam and direct messaging and email, personal relationships matter even more. The steak dinners are back, right? You have your steak dinners, get to know people, wine and dine them, and build that relationship of trust. It's not going to change. It's only going to allow a founder to meet more people. And I think that's a big difference, but it's a commodity, frankly.
So since you mentioned about the Snyk founder, so I know that you invested in him like 3 times, and like before the first time, like how do you kind of identify who would be a good founder? Obviously, right now I feel like as you mentioned, like you want to back technical founder who have bold idea. What is a bold idea to you? Like how do you identify who knows what they're talking about? And then I guess like my question have like 2 subpart. One is like I feel like I constantly encounter smart founders. They are young and like maybe they're new in like a particular industry, but they seem like they went to the best school. They have like the best education in AI or something. But like I feel like it's really hard to differentiate like who would actually build something out of nowhere. How do you quickly kind of build the relationship with the right people? And then I know that like you mentioned on some other podcasts, like you would invest in these founders when no one else wants to back them. I think that's really bold. And like I feel like from the LPs I've chatted with, like people are looking to back the founders that will eventually, maybe you have to like be fight with all these like big name brands or something. It's kind of like counterintuitive. How do you kind of like justify that like urge to fight over the hottest deals, or like identify something that's like potentially will be backed by like tier 1 VC or something? I guess that's like 2 questions.
Yeah, those are, wow, super thoughtful questions. I could literally go on for all of them. So I guess a couple of things. First, just to let the audience know, I kind of coined this concept with my partners called Inception investing. And what Inception investing in my mind is what Arthur Rock used to do back in the 70s, right? The creator of venture capital. And that is to collaborate with technical founders well before they incorporate and well before they write their first line of code. Help them pre-vet their idea, perhaps maybe even go to some potential buyers, right? I mentioned some infrastructure buyers or CIOs or CXOs or users, just to help them vet and get some more feedback. Help them pre-sell their first hires. And then we want to be there to lead their initial round right at inception or incorporation. And that allows them, and this is about leading, right? Writing the check. And the check could be as small as $500K, it could be as big as $10 to $12 million, right? It just depends on who the founder is. And this allows them to get the business right away. Imagine the difference between incorporating and then trying to raise capital and then trying to hire people. That could take 12 months. But imagine then pre-selling the whole process, you incorporate, boom, you've got 8 people ready to go building, right? So that's a big difference. So I like to say, first and foremost, most people don't need venture capital. If you take venture capital, then you're signing up to say, I want to build something big, right? So you've got to ask that question. Secondly, I think where people get tripped up, there are 2 different ways to look at every new investment opportunity, especially at inception. One is, are you creating a completely brand new category? Is this an emerging market that doesn't exist now? What's the rubric? How does that look? Or are you reinventing an existing market? How are you doing something 10, 20 times better because of your unique insights? So that'll be the first framework. Second thing I think about is, I like to say it's not the TAM or total addressable market that you start with. And too many people get hung up on that. How big's the TAM? Or what does Gartner say about the TAM? Or what does the banker say? I don't give a shit about that. It's not the TAM you start with. It's a TAM you exit with. I'll give you a great example there. Like Snyk, when Guy started, and he had 3 ideas, by the way, and we'd known him for a while. He's like, look, I want to actually create developer-friendly security. And the first question he asks is, what the hell is that, right? And so let's define developer-friendly security. Developer-friendly security is helping founders specifically as they're using open source components, looking for third-party vulnerabilities, and telling them that there's vulnerabilities there that they need to fix. And by the way, is that enough? No, that's not enough, because if you're only telling them their vulnerabilities, then it's creating more work for them. They need to discover and figure out how to do it. He said, let me go one step further and fix it for them. I'm gonna give them literally the click to fix it. That was a big insight. Second thing was, he's like, by the way, I'm only gonna start with JavaScript. I'm not gonna do it for everybody. Like, for example, do you think the Rust developer cares what the JavaScript developer does? No. He's like, let me make the JavaScript developer very, very successful. In fact, let me only look at Node. So he started super, super narrow. He went a mile deep and an inch wide. But we knew, okay, so this is kind of the TAM we started with was very small. But we knew that if he was successful, we could expand to multiple language. We could create a big concept of developer-friendly security. And fast forward, a couple of years ago, the last round was raised at over 7 billion. So if you look at that mantra about markets and people, I call it the 5 Ps for Inception investing. This is a kind of a framework that I think about. First, it's the people. And it's kind of like, what gives me the reason to believe that you or your team are the ones to tackle this problem and build something really big? Who are your other potential hires that you're going to bring for speed out of the gates? I want to know who's going to follow you, right? The best people, even if they haven't been a founder before, maybe they're a head of product or head of engineering, already have their 5 or 6 people they want to bring. I want to see who they are. I want to see kind of, are they going to join? I want to talk to some of them before I invest. Secondly, is product, right? What is the unique technical insight? What is the magic that you're going to bring to make a customer's life 10 times better or more with your product or solution than without, right? And so this requires a founder's ability to zoom in to the end user, because the end user may not be the same as the buyer, right? So in Snyk's case, it was the end user was a developer, but the buyer eventually becomes VP of engineering or a CISO. But you need the ability to articulate and understand and empathize. Instead of drawing architectural diagrams, you need to understand, what is the product going to look like? How's it going to feel? The magic, though, today is that people can take a Figma and kind of show you what that looks like without building anything. Before, we didn't have that. Third thing I look at in the 5 Ps would be pain. What is the burning pain right now? Is this a top 1, 2, or 3 hair and fire problem? Is this a painkiller, or is this just a vitamin? Like, is this going to really change kind of the landscape of my priorities as a user? The next P I would say is passion. Most great enterprise startups are born out of a problem that a founder usually has experienced. And if you're a technical founder, when you have a problem, you're like always thinking about, how do I automate it? This is different from a business school person who takes a whiteboard and says, hey, let me draw out the market from a top-down perspective and find white space. I want to find founders in the enterprise space that have lived the pain, felt the pain. And the bottom line is, the passion is really important, because, ultimately there's going to be lots of ups and downs, and you're going to have to be so excited about delivering this product and this mission that you're going to have to live through the good and bad times. And finally, I like to think about what's potential, what's possible. What is the art of the possible? How big can this be? So I like to ask the question that, hey, I get what this looks like in 1 year or 2 years, but give me the picture. If in 3 to 5 years, every single thing goes right, and you start with this wedge, how big can this problem be? I mean, how big can this company be? What would it look like? How would it change people's lives? There's 990 things that can go wrong, but if one goes right, how big can that be, right? And so those are the frameworks that you have to look at and get very comfortable with when you're investing, when there's nothing there but people.
I have so many questions in the 5 Ps. I think generally, like, what would be your stable question to ask the founder to kind of vet the 5 Ps? And I have like follow-up questions. I don't.
First question is this: why the hell are you doing this? Why are you crazy enough to go do this? What is it that's making you give up $1 million a year job, or give up safety and security to go pursue this passion? That's always the first question. It's the why. And you get so many different answers about that. And you can also feel either the passion there, or sometimes you may meet a founder that I just feel like I need to do a startup. And that's just not it. You want to feel the passion, the energy, like the why. I want to understand that when things do go wrong, when
Mhm.
hard times come, because they always do, will this founder be around to stick it for the long haul? And the why are you doing this is one of the most important open-ended questions one can ask in terms of this.
I think this is hard because I think I have peers who I've like encountered early on, like living in Silicon Valley, that actually went out to become like unicorn founders. And then when you ask them like why they're doing this, maybe like one day they were doing like a crypto idea, that today they're doing an AI idea kind of thing. So like basically I feel like it's kind of hard to judge who will like eventually have the bigger outcome in general. So I guess like what would be the core thing that you're looking for in this answer? Like, I mean, obviously people's answer would be very different. Like,
Yeah, I would say that in the enterprise space, it narrows down a lot more, frankly, right? Because ultimately you're also thinking to yourself, no matter how you start, whether it's
mhm,
a PLG company, you're eventually going to, all roads lead to top-down enterprise sales. If you want to get the big banks, you're going to have to. So, for me, a lot of it comes down to the why. And then the next question is what is the unique, valuable insight that you have from your why, right? And usually it's born out of experience and pain that you have. Like, for example, I'll give you a good example. Alex Yampolsky, founder of Security Scorecard, invented the security rating space. The AR is over $100 million now. He's a former CISO at Gilt Group, did like encryption and cryptography at Goldman. And his why was basically like, man, I am so sick and tired of filling out vendor questionnaires for security because I have PCI compliance and all this stuff at Gilt Group. And his belief was that you're only as secure as the least secure API or connection into your system. And Alex asked the question with his co-founder, Sam Kasume, how can I automate this? What if I can bring an outside-in approach to this? Can I use data, to do this and create a scorecard and rating system? So he was one of the founders that him and Sam invented the security rating system. And so he was firsthand knowledge. He was living the pain. He was passionate. He's still at it 10 years later, and the company's, crushing it right now. So those are the types of things. It's the why him, and then the why the unique insight, and what is it? And then look, there's some ups and downs, but the guy is cranking along. And I can tell you that story across the board for every single founder, BigID or Kustomer, Brad and Jeremy, that was their third customer support startup. And now guess what? They sold to Meta. And then we had the opportunity with our friends at Battery and Redpoint to buy them back out to go for, we call it Custy 2.0. Why the hell would they do that after they just did it? You know why? Because they can't stop doing it. They freaking love it. And they have this pain that they started with, that customer support should be better. And it should start with the atomic unit as the customer instead of the ticket. And they're at it again. And why are they at it again? Because they see this new platform called Gen AI. So these are the types of founders you keep meeting. They just can't stop being founders. Rahul from Superhuman, we backed him twice. We did Reportive and then Superhuman. We're first check into Superhuman, like literally we're like right there with them, and he's still at it, right? So this is kind of, you just see it over and over, Grace. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just, you feel the passion, you see it. And these are the founders. They usually start something else always.
when you first started your career in venture, how did you kind of like quickly build up the network within the founder community? Um, so I also like, I guess like the right founder community too. Like, how do you kind of maintain the um, ground floor knowledge when the technology is constantly changing?
Yeah, I got to tell you, well, I was always the person that was an underdog, right? Because when you are a enterprise tech investor out of New York, writing your first check starting in 1996 until, let's say now, you're always discounted, number one. And number two, I'd say is that because of that and being in New York, what I did know was that my unique angle was the ability to access and provide an understanding of what some of the largest buyers on the planet would think about and how they would think about it, right? And so the two things I did was to build a network. First thing I did was I made my first investment in Israel in 1999. So I was on the board of a company back in 1999 with a firm called Israel Seed Partners. And I would go back and forth to Israel. And I figured that, hey, no one's really investing in Israel in 99. Let me go build a niche there and kind of see what I can do and bridge the gap between Israel and Silicon Valley. The second thing I did was get on a plane. I spent a month out in Silicon Valley for about 10 years, just building out a network because I was hyper paranoid about not having access to some of the larger partners. And over time, what you find is that it takes a long time to build this flywheel, right? You can't just kind of bootstrap it overnight. You've got to be very dedicated. You've got to pick an area. Let's say you're a new professional. Let's just say I want to get in cybersecurity. Well, you know what? Go to the Black Hat events. Go to RSA. Pick smaller events. Pick people who aren't the CEOs who will talk to you. Pick the up and comers, right? If you're 25 years old, find the other 25-year-old engineers. You know why? Because they're going to rise up and be future founders. Some of the friends that I built, that I made kind of back in the mid 90s, some of them are CTOs at like PayPal and other places like that. And these were people that were just doing, kind of infrastructure software development back in the day, right? So you don't have to find the CEO, find people of your ilk, talk about it. And that's kind of how I would do it. Be authentic, and dive in and pick an area.
I wonder, so like, let's talk about like, I know that like you are, for example, you just mentioned like, the CTO of PayPal or something. So like, you have a lot of like relationships with the clients, maybe the CIO of the world. How do you build up that kind of caliber of people like on a day-to-day basis? Like, I mean, I feel like a lot of people were saying like, if you want to vet if a company is successful, you have to speak to the customers, or like just like basically verify the idea, or like verify the business model to other buyers in general. How do you quickly build up the buyer ecosystem within your network?
I think it's very important before you even go there
Mm-hmm.
is to ask the question of what does verify mean? Okay. Because, Fortune 500s don't get paid to take on risk, to take on technical
Mm-hmm.
risk. And I'm not sure if Henry Ford really said it, but the quote is attributed to him, where basically it's like, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they'd want a faster horse.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just take that idea. If I sell a flying car, and let's say I create a flying car and go into my customers and say, do you want that? None of them are going to say I want it. Customers' jobs aren't to be innovative. What I have to do is take the flying car and make it feel like a faster horse, and have the upgrade cycle to the flying car, right? And the reason I say that is because there's sometimes some founders we meet may be so far ahead technically that vetting it, you're not going to get anything out of it. There's no budget for it. Most of the things in new categories, there's no budget for it. I'll give you a good example. When we funded Protect AI, we started working with the founder in October 21, and Protect AI is a leading end-to-end ML and AI security platform. And the founder, Ian and Badar and Dee, came from the space. They started datascience.com, not Dee, but Ian and Badar. That was one of the first ML ops infra companies. They sold it to Oracle. And then Ian and Dee met each other at AWS because Ian was running go-to-market for AI and ML. And the reason I bring this up is because we're so excited about AI security. We funded this thing in February 22. And our thesis was basically like, look, AI models and ML models more than AI at the time are driving a lot of decisions, whether it be mortgage applications or what happens with Tesla Autopilot and, et cetera, et cetera. What happens if there's a seminal hack? What happens if the model gets poisoned or data gets poisoned or whatever? And we knew that Ian and Dee, based on the customers they talked to, that whether a market materialized or not, whether there was a seminal attack moment or not, that we could build a nice business. So let's give them 3 years of runway. Fast forward, we had the ChatGPT moment in October of 2022. Boy, were we lucky. Because all of a sudden it's like, oh man, I got to secure everything, right? So fast forward, that was October 2022. We just completed a B round. We announced a B round just last week. Raised another 60 million at 400 pre-460 post. Company's pipeline is off the charts. But the point is I talked to a few people, but I wasn't calling them to vet and kind of verify. I mean, a lot of this, I like to say there's something called intuitive TAM. Right. And the question is, if this and that, I mean, there's going to be no market report. There's no market reports on how big AI security is going to be or how big the problem is going to be. We're like, hey, does everyone have a model? Yeah, everyone runs models. Do people have externally facing models? Yeah, they have externally facing models. Hey, would they like to secure this if they could? If you went to a CISO, do they have a dashboard to understand how many models are in production or not? So some of this is like, and by the way, you have to have some intuitive nature too and balance it out with kind of the verification, because the best deals move really, really, really fast. So this is where you have to come in with a prepared mind. You have to have a framework for understanding the people first and foremost on how to vet them. The third is you can't drown yourself in analysis paralysis. If I went to 10 different people, and I could have, they're going to tell me the same thing. Yeah, sure. You know, whatever. It sounds good. Yeah, that could be a problem 3 years from now. Like, does that add any value to me in making my decision? But now it's a full-on market. And we've seen enough of these patterns where markets get created out of nothing. If you look at the intuitive thought process around it versus over analyzing everything. And that's why we're back in the people business. And I go back to the 5 Ps. So that will be an example of how we think about it. And how you create the network is, look, you have to be super thoughtful about it. You start with 1 person or 2 people. You understand kind of what some of their pain points are, and then invite them to a dinner where you're offering some value to them, right? So they can meet some startups. Not every person wants to meet with new innovative startups, but there are a lot of people that do. And then you kind of just continue that, building that relationship around that. And over time, you know, every one of my partners does the same thing. And you know, lo and behold, you've got a very strong, tight-knit network. It's not the number of people, it's more the quality of the people that you have and understanding of what they're thinking about.
I wonder, oh, by the way, I want to shout out to the audience. Hi, audience. I don't know your name, but like obviously he was saying you are giving great advice. So I wonder so I know that I guess like deep fake space is like very popular right now. You guys invest in a company called Polygard, and you know how I know this company? It was
How do you know that company? We haven't even announced it or said anything about it yet.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
No, that's funny. No, that's totally fine. I mean, it's not a big deal at all.
Oh no. I was
love
just
the fact that you know that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Like I just saw like a lot of people's stack has that as a competitor, so I looked into it. But I'm just out of curiosity on like how do you quickly pick something within that space, because I think it's a really popular space and that just tons of like young talents are building in the space. And I wonder what would you be like looking for in backing someone in the ecosystem that's like a popular space that's like everyone's building. How do you like kind of select between Polygard versus everything else?
I would say that if I had to select between Polygard and everyone else, then I would not be doing my job. We invested in that thing a while back before I was heating up. And I'd known the founder, Josh McKenty. Josh and I go way back. He was the field CTO at Pivotal Software. I was the first investor in Green Plum, which became Pivotal, a very big public company. And I got to meet Josh then. And Josh had, prior to that, founded a startup in the OpenStack space and sold it to VMware. So he's a founder and CTO. He was a field CTO. So what this means is he's highly technical and he's very good with customers. And so Josh came to me a couple of years ago with a startup and we did not back it. And then he came back one day and said, hey, let me get some advice. This was spring of last year. And he was looking at the whole deep fake space. And we started going down the rabbit hole. My partner, Ellen, and I started going down the rabbit hole with him. And we're like, yeah, not exactly what we're looking for in the deep fake space. And he came back a couple months later and said, you know what? I've really landed on the problem. The problem is deep fake audio and video. And how do you apply that to financial crime? So not only did he take this technology, but he focused on a very specific use case, which, by the way, when I was talking to a bunch of the CISOs and I asked them top 3 problems, they're like, number 3 or 4 would be, I'm scared of that. So you match those 2 things together and you have a founder that I've wanted to back for a long time. We've already been vetting him, right? So I've known him for 15 years. It's very easy. And there weren't a ton of competitors in the space at the time. And look, there's like MediaGuard and some other things, but they're more content driven versus very specifically driven around this. And I had known him. We watched him iterate. We watched him change. We watched him bring on a co-founder. And then we obviously knew that was a problem that had a burning hair on fire problem because we had already known. And it was a very easy check for us to write that came together very quickly, but that was over a 15-year process in a weird way, right? And so now I like to say that our job at Boldstart is to invest in founders where people are like, why'd you do that, right? And or invest in markets, because if we're already investing, to your point of looking at 30 different companies, and look, we know that if a space becomes hot, there'll be 30 companies, but if we're at the time looking at 30 companies, that's not a space for us to be in, unless these founders have an ability, maybe it's a really old market and they're just reinventing something and this team is just lights out, right? That's the only way we do it. And we've done that, right? Like a Kustomer with Brad and Jeremy, we had a very big exit to Meta. Why would we go after Zendesk and Salesforce and someone else? Well, guess what? They had sold their last company to Salesforce, called Assistly. And they had a unique angle and a very strong team. So that would be the reinventing the market kind of syndrome. But the point is that I don't think we would have done Polygard if he came in a new space as one of 30.
So basically spot them like way before they're successful. So like, I guess like when they already sold a company to VMware, like that's kind of like a really good sign. How do you kind of capture these talents? I assume like you maybe catch them like way before they were selling something to a big company. But I feel like it kind of requires a lot of budget from the fund to back like whatever this founder build early on. What's your perspective on portfolio construction when it comes to like, some people maybe like will do really well at their third company, um, but like very early on, it's kind of like harder to tell. So like, I guess like, how do you think about portfolio construction now that you think back? If you're starting a fund today, like how would you kind of like construct it at a pre-seed seed stage?
Yeah, and I'll change it from pre-seed seed to Inception, which is
okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Because the moniker, by the way, if you look at PitchBook, the median age of a company that raises the pre-seed round is 1.2 years old. That's not the idea stage. The median age of a company that raises a seed round is 2.7, and then you have right, and that's not first, and then you have round sizes now that are increasingly $10 million. What is that, pre-seed, seed? I don't know. It's just Inception. It's just 3 founders who are actually kick ass and are going to build something. So at our stage, if you want to own Inception, you have to have the ability to write a check as small as $500K or 10 to 12 million bucks to own the round, right? You need pole position and leadership control. And within that, I broke out, there's 3 different kinds of rounds. There is the discovery round, we'll call it 0 to 2 million. And a lot of times that might be a first-time founder or an emerging market, or just a founder who's hell-bent on not getting diluted that much. And you've got to be able to like navigate within that landscape and not force feed too much capital into that founder. Then you have, that's the discovery round. Then you have the classic, which is a $3 to $5 million round. That's your classic round that used to be called seed, but it's not seed because once again, the company is not 2.7 years old. It's actually, you're collaborating with them before. And then I call it the jumbo, anything greater than 5, usually $6 to $10 million or more. And that's usually your second or third time founder. And what happens is that if you got a big idea and maybe you're kind of a well-known, maybe product manager or engineer from a great company and you're starting something new, that $3 to $5 million round, because of the multi-stage firms wanting to go earlier and earlier, that might end up becoming a jumbo, right? So I'm seeing less of those middle companies. I'm seeing more of 0 to 2 and 6 to 10. On the 0 to 2 side, look, we're going to take 15 to 20 investments in that space. And I want to let you know, when you think about portfolio construction, any investment we make has to have the opportunity to become a core company. Let's just say we have a very concentrated portfolio of, let's say, 25 core companies where we take board seats. We actively engage with the founders from the very beginning, inception, all the way through exit. Look, I'm still on the board of Snyk. That's a pre-IPO company right now, and we've been there from the very beginning. So that's how we collaborate, and that's how we go the distance. But the point is that on the discovery side, hey, look, a lot of times it might be a first-time founder creating a new market. I don't know where Polygard is going to go. I think it's going to be a massive market, but maybe they have an early exit. Well, guess what? I would hope that we have an NPS score. We work very closely with people like that they come back to us again and again and again. Mm-hmm. When Rahul started Rapportive, we were one of his first investors out of Fund 1. We helped him through the process when he sold to LinkedIn. And when he came back to start Superhuman, we were there for him from the very beginning for his next thing, right? And so that's kind of how we think about it. But we're not just going to write a check into a founder and say, hey, this might be the second or third time, second or third time that might be the charm. It's like, no, I want the first one to work. We know full well that the likelihood of it, quote unquote, working may not be very high, but if it works, can it actually be a fund returner? It has to always meet that bar. And if it doesn't work, then we help them navigate and land the plane and kind of have a graceful exit or make some money. And then hopefully through that process, we build that relationship where we're like, oh my God, I know how they work in the toughest of times. They know how we work in the toughest of times. And I hope they come back to us and we get to partner again. And that we've got so many multiple co-founders that we've backed over the years because of that long-term thinking.
Can you elaborate more about, like, for example, you use like the Superhuman founder as an example, right? So like they have like Rapportive, which sold to LinkedIn, and then like how do you kind of like discover this person like at the very early on? I'm just using him as an example. We could use someone else. That's like a more generic example. If you have a generic
example, and which specific example you're looking for? How do we meet the founder in general, or the first time?
Like a top founder? So like, okay, maybe we could.
Well, see, the wonderful thing is that
you don't know if they're like,
yeah, you don't know who the top founder is going to be, because in fact, if they're already a top founder, it's going to be the VC gong show. There's going to be everyone in the world trying to chase them. But how do you kind of identify who the top founder is going to be? Look, Rahul, you know, when we invested in him, he had this thing called the K factor. He's talking about viral coefficients. He always published this new mantra every year or two, is the viral coefficient, the K factor. And then he did this thing called PMF, you know, and he did that first round review piece where all of a sudden he blew up about kind of how he thought about that. And then he did this whole thing about gamification but the point is that he wasn't anyone that was well known. He just was a guy that had so much passion, and we just saw this, his ability, his design thinking, his understanding of the user, his empathy for the user just screamed off the page. I think we have another one, by the way, right now too, in a company that my partner Elliot Durbin led called Crew AI, crewai.com, where this guy Joao is an absolute beast when you watch him on, and he's got a whole open source agentic workflow platform right now. And Andrew Ng ended up building a course around him about how to build agentic workflows on his platform. But you can kind of just see that wow factor, the deep technical understanding, the ability to communicate in an unbelievable, passionate way, and explain to business users and technical people how this product provides a lot of value. And you got to take bets, right? You got to say, could this be the next one of those people, right? And that's ultimately what you have to do.
I have two thoughts on this. Like, one part is like, if you're younger, would you be the person who live in a hacker house and like just be friends with all the engineers that you could meet? Or like, what would be the best sourcing model to source talent? Because I kind of feel like whenever I go to a VC event, it's always like the technical engineering person that's like just like a bunch of founder fight over the best engineering talent. If you just stick with like, I don't know, like the top 5 like engineer in the AI space or something, like you will be good. Or like how would you kind of like structure your time to be in the right pool to be hit by the lucky bus?
1000%. It's all about the engineers. Well, first of all, you have to remember founders hang out with other founders. So if you are investing, at least at our stage, and you want to get access to these, you got to hang out with founders. Right? Founders.
Like, what does hell mean? So like, I feel like it's hard to be like, okay, let me judge your technical ability when I just met you. Like, or like maybe you go to like a bunch of hackathons. Like, does that mean anything? Or like, I feel like the hackathon projects are kind of like,
yeah, I don't know if it's about
necessarily
hackathon projects, but as at the end of the day, it's like the way that Boldstart, we spend 80% of our time hanging out with founders. And founders refer, I mean, we get most of our flow from other founders, like either in our existing portfolio or friend to friends, right? That's how you get the best opportunities. And, you know, since we're investing in technical founders, a lot of them happen to be engineers. There's no surprise why, you know, one of the partners we brought on board, Ellen Chisa, is a former engineer and PM and founder of a dev tooling company, right? So who does she hang out with? She hangs out with engineers, right? And so, you know, that's kind of, you know, how you build, and depending on what you might do. If you're a cybersecurity person, you might want to hang out with cyber people. But the point is that you got to pick a niche, you got to spend time in it, and you're not going to get the deal flow from VCs. You're going to get it from being in the mix and thinking about what value can you offer, right? You know, how are you going to offer some value in the early days, and you have to live it. I mean, honestly, like this is a very hard business, and you have to be curious. You have to love what you do, because this is 24/7. I mean, our best deals always get taken down over the weekend, whether it's us kind of nailing something down over the weekend. I'm talking about Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and the founders are involved, or, you know, even our existing portfolio companies when they're raising rounds and doing the San Francisco shuffle. It used to be called the Sand Hill Shuffle. We'll call it the San Francisco Shuffle now. And these deals get done over the weekend all the time. So you have to absolutely love what you do and be passionate about it. And that means that you're just going to end up, you know, a lot of my friends end up being our founders, right? Just because that's what I like talking about, right? I mean, it's not that, you know, and I do talk about other things, but, you know, this is what I'm into.
Would you kind of like, so I guess like one of my sourcing strategy would be like, okay, find the most like successful technical person I know, and then be like, okay, do you think this is a good person to chat with or something? But like, I think in their mind, these people would be maybe very, very technical, but can they build like a successful company? I feel like they really also need someone who's like sales driven, or kind of, I don't know. Like, I feel like the technical people are really good at like recruiting technical talent, but they may not be the best like salesperson, or like kind of like having other stuff going on that could make a successful business. How do you kind of like find that balance, or like what would be the things that you contribute to the founder to like help them with like other stuff?
That's a great question. So we like to say the ability to tell a story is probably one of the most important things you can do. And telling a story means that you have to sell, right? You've got to sell me on getting a check. You have to sell the co-founder for joining you. You've got to sell the future hires to join you. And if you can't do that, to your point, then you can be the best technical founder, period, but you may not go anywhere. So two things. One is it's very rare. We'll call it super, super rare that this exists in one person, that they have the ability to go down to the deepest of code and go head to head or toe to toe with, any of the most sophisticated engineers, but then also zoom out and tell a story to a technical buyer or to a buyer or to an investor. I'd say Guy from Snyk and Tesla, he's one of the few people that I know that can do that, period, just lock stop. And there are a few of them. But Grace, you can say, what does the rest of the team look like? Because usually it's 2 co-founders or 3 co-founders. So I would just expect there's one person on the team that could actually articulate that. It doesn't always have to be the main, the CEO and co-founder. It could be someone else, right? And so that's 2. And then 3 is, if they don't have that, we ask ourselves the question is, who can we surround them with from the very beginning and pair with, right? So we always have a group of folks, that we've been doing this a long time, that we know specifically that can go in from 0 to 1 or 0 to 3, who may be looking for an opportunity to be a co-founder. Maybe they don't have the best idea, but they know how to execute from 0 to 1, 0 to 3. And so we would then bring that person in to help and see if they can partner and pair with this amazing technical founder as well to see how that goes, right? So it's not just one person. It's what you can do, either helping them put that team together, or they may have a few other people that can do it together as well. And we've done both.
What's your recommendations for, I've also heard about other investor would do GitHub ranking, here's how many stars this person have on GitHub or something. So obviously I'm non-technical, but I'm constantly learning in the space. But I think people would go into maybe GitHub or somewhere to look for a portfolio of what the technical talent have built. That's how they spend their time. And then maybe the second scoop, the second basically school of thoughts or something are going to every hackathon or event or I don't know, happy hour, AI launch party or whatever. So basically to find the technical talent. And then the third tier, or the third group of people would be going after the repeat founders or I don't know, big tech or let's say OpenAI first 5 employee or something who left OpenAI or something. So people will fight over them. How would you spend your time on these 3 category of things, or maybe you spend time somewhere else? And then also, is your firm in Miami or are you still in New York? What is so how do you think about the geolocation when it comes to picking the right founder?
Everything you said, I do none of because everyone's already doing it. If everyone's already doing it, then it's not something to be done. To go pick after. Do you remember the time where everyone's I need an Airbnb founder, or I need a Google founder, or I need an Uber open source founder? Yeah, those things end up getting overfunded and they're super competitive. We have to find the founders that aren't on the radar yet. We got to find the next, Brad and Jeremy's and Rahul guy before they become that, right? And that's so that, and then in 2 or 3 years, I hope that they become one of those people oh man, that's pretty cool. I missed it. I want to be that, right? So we don't do that. 2 is we've been doing this a long time. So we do have a flywheel, right? We've been doing this now as a firm for 14 years, and everyone, Shomik, who you had on the pod, and Ellen and Elliot and I, we all have different networks and different ways of doing things. Elliot embeds himself in portfolio companies and lives there. He spent the last 3 months in Clay in Brooklyn, and then he put Crew AI in the same office. Guess what happens when you're in an office where Clay is a hyper-growth company? Every founder walks in the door asking Kareem for advice, right? So isn't that great? Our sourcing strategy, when Elliot and I first started, we lived in portfolio companies. We lived in a company called Divide for a year until they sold to Google and became the enterprise platform. Then we lived inside a Kustomer for a year and a half. And guess what? When you're inside of a hyper-growth company as a initial small investor, Boldstart wasn't even on the map. No one knew who we were, but they kept saying, "Who are those people?" And then the founders were like, "Oh, they're one of my first investors. Go talk to them too." Because founders always talk to other founders. Founders want to go to successful founders and ask them for questions. Successful founders end up writing small checks. Think about it. So that is kind of how the lifeblood works. And so Elliot's our kind of resident. So when you say, where do we live? Yeah, technically, I guess the office is in Miami, but frankly, if you look at our portfolio, probably a third is in Europe, including Israel. And we've probably got 15 portfolio companies in Israel. Remember I said that I started investing there in 99. I'm on a lot of Israeli security boards there, Snyk, BigID, Elliot's on the board of Rico, right? So, and the list, we got Hypernative, a crypto security company, Trace Finance. We have a whole bunch of things in Israel, and we have a very strong network there. And then, Showmix in the West Coast, Ellen's in Boston. I think our distributed model, we have a model that's, as Andreessen said, in the cloud. Our distributed model allows us to cover more ground quickly because many times we'll meet founders who are not all in one location. There might be a founder in Boston and one in San Francisco. We get in a call, Ellen brings it in, and then Showmix jumps on 2 hours later and meets the other founder, right? So that's kind of how we operate. You got to operate at speed and velocity. The same thing that we say about founders is that, the early signs of success from a founder, it's product velocity. It's hiring velocity to a point, right? Meaning that how do you get your first 5 engineers on board? And hopefully you've already pre-sold them before we invested. And it's a learning velocity. How quickly are you creating experiments, learning from it and changing? And for an investor at inception, when you find hot founders, even though they're not a well-known quantity, for us, it's velocity too. How fast from the time you meet them and that can you make a decision and get your team on board to get something done? And that's kind of how we built our firm around speed, because speed wins, period, across the board. And that's kind of what we do.
Wow. I am so impressed because I haven't heard of you. I think that's a really great logic, having the best founders who is a hyper growth founders in your fund space or whatever, physically working with them to attract deal flow. That's legendary. And I feel like if I do that as a small check angel investor, they would kick me out of their office in no time. But how do I I guess also how do you know which company will fast grow? I mean, I see some CEO that are amazing at attracting technical talents, or some, they have some sort of specialties, but I don't know, how do you kind of tell who is fast growing?
You don't. You once again, you have to treat every founder you invest in as in the fact they're going to be the next big thing. And if they happen to have the space, they're in a very interesting area that you have intuition around. Maybe you spend a day a week there and a day a week in another office. So it's not about looking backward and saying successful. You have to give them the belief and the tools and arm them with your confidence that they're going to deliver. And when they deliver, man, you were there with a front row seat, sitting in the middle of the whole thing. But those are the things you can't engineer these things. They just happen, right? I didn't know Divide was going to get sold to Google and become part of this Android enterprise system. But we just loved the founder, and he is so technical and so fun to be with. And we just knew that he was a founder magnet, and he had open office space, and we paid some money in and just sat in the office. And Ellie and I had 2 desks with our knees up to our chest, sitting next to each other. And it was kind of crazy, but that's like the DNA of the firm. Or even, at one point in time, we moved into a portfolio company, and then Alex and Sam, when they left Gilt to start Security Scorecard, they worked out of our offices for 2 months. Right. So these are just living with these folks and feeling it and being part of it, that excitement. I'm telling you, when you remember those days and just see kind of where they get to now, that there's no better feeling, frankly, than kind of remembering those days and reminiscing.
What if a founder asks you something that you can do? Not you can't do, but for example, I feel like as a content creator, a lot of people, also I want to ask about your content creating strategy, because you have over 400 newsletter going on. That's a lot. I subscribe to them on my other email, but you're very productive. I feel like, number one, how do you even choose what to write about? But okay, so back to the first question. I'm so sorry. My brain is just so over the place.
No worries.
So I wonder, how do you think about if a founder asks you, hey, we should focus on creating hype, blah, blah, blah company just raised X amount of dollar, but they're not better than us. How do we recreate the hype for us? How would you advise people on these kind of things? I personally feel like you should focus on getting a customer instead of competing with people on Twitter, and battling on the follower ground. But I wonder, how do you see media in this space? And also like, how do you kind of like advise founder in that kind of situation?
Yeah. So I'd say there's a time and place for everything. And there are certain strengths that every founder has. There's something embedded in their DNA. Some founders from the very beginning are already very good and natural at getting out there in the market. Like, let's say like a Joao from Crew AI. If you go look at what Crew AI is doing, he's a machine. He does live coding. He's always sharing things. He's passionate and very authentic. And there's others that require work. I mean, I was just on a Zoom yesterday with the founder of Hypernative.io. And he's more of a cerebral, super thoughtful founder. He sold his last company to IBM in the cloud infra space. And I said, man, you know what? I just realized that you have 10,000 followers now on X for your company. And I said, I remember like having that conversation with you saying you had to get out there. I was like, man, I hired really well. And so it doesn't have to be the founder, right? He hired really well and he had a strategy around repeated content generation. But the point is that first thing I say is that you have to worry about what things that you can control and not what you can't. So I always tell founders, who cares if X company raises X dollars or whatever, it doesn't matter, or X person's doing what. Let's focus on what is our strength, what is the unique advantage we're going to lean on. And then when we do our strategy, let's have a proactive strategy around it. I just literally had that conversation today about how do we want to do that, right? What is kind of what space do we want to own? How do we want to own it? How do we want to launch? And the role of the media these days is changing, right? A lot of the best launches these days are outside of the media, right? People are, to your point, coming out with a great hype video or whatever, right? That's where a lot of those it's almost being oversaturated. But, I think there are just multiple ways to think about it. And it's not being reactive. You have to be proactive. You got to look at the strengths of the founders and kind of everything else and come up with a good narrative. So I think it's more strategic than reactive. That's number one. And number two is just regarding content. Man, I started blogging back in October of 2003. And once again, this is my idea of kind of back in the day, the word grokking it was just kind of getting in the middle, diving in deep. So, I was like, hey, what is this blogging platform? So I was on Blogger early, then I was on Typepad, then, and then WordPress. So I have a blog called beyondvc.com, which I haven't really posted to in a long time, but I have archives there from October of 2003. So I started writing my thoughts down on paper back in the day. And I met a lot of interesting people doing that because there weren't a lot of people doing it then. And my newsletter, What's Hot, and ITVC, right? www.what'shot.it.vc is all about just, I'm always kind of reading things and sharing notes. I get people sending me lots of things. And how do I just share kind of what I think is top of mind for the week, or maybe things I thought about, or, and just kind of, and it's really it started out as notes for myself. And I find that by writing, I get more crystal clear thinking about how to express myself to others. And it makes me better that way. And it also makes me absorb the information. And then the byproduct of that is I get to share it with others, and others get to respond to me and tell me. I get to test out ideas. I get to share ideas. I get to learn. Because the one thing that I can tell you is that doing this for 28 years, there's nothing that I can say with absolute certainty. Everything in my mind is that there's no one right playbook. I'd like to tell founders that, hey, maybe playbook worked for this company and that company and this company, but maybe take some of that, take some of your own, and now you can create the new playbook. Or like, hey, let's give you an example. Palantir just crushed their numbers. I've been kind of really watching and studying what they've been doing. They have this thing called the bootcamp model. And I was joking, PLG, SLG, or BLG, bootcamp-led growth, right? What does that look like, right? And so but people are always learning. How do you take this and how do you become a student of the game? And that's kind of what I like to share. And when I share that to the world, I get people coming back to me and saying, oh, this is interesting, or that's interesting, or take a look at this. And so I'm learning a ton from just sitting here, typing something up on Saturday morning, just doing my own notes to myself. And that turned into this thing where I've been writing it weekly for 405 weeks.
Wow.
In a row.
Okay. So
even through COVID.
I wonder, so I want to be mindful of time. So we have 1 minute real question and a 1 minute fire round for you if you have time.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
one question is, what's your content diet? Like, because I think to write like 400 something blogs, I mean, I've been doing maybe like around, not 400 podcasts yet, but like we're getting there. But I feel like it's hard. So like, I think you need to consume so much information. And then whenever I write something, I constantly feel like everything I say is like so dumb. Like, how do you kind of like decide like what to really publish and then what's kind of like the goal of publishing? Because I would assume it's like attract the best founders or like thought leaders or something in the space. But obviously, like, I constantly feel like if I put something out there, like what if like everyone else already, I don't know, like there's always like someone with the same thing, like said the same thing somewhere else, and then like blah blah blah. So I wonder, how do you, I guess, like what's your content diet, and then how do you kind of like put together the thing?
Yeah. So my content diet is basically like every morning I probably catch up for like, a half hour just on what's the latest news, right? What's in my email box, what's in my Slack inbox, what links are people sharing. And if anything's interesting, I'll click it and scan it. And if that's interesting enough, I might grab a clip and just put it in there. So it doesn't require a lot of time. And then at the end, so these are just clips of things that I think are trending or people might find interesting, or just things that I've been thinking about. Mm-hmm. And at the end, I think I put a preamble together, like either like more of a post on, what is kind of top of mind or whatever that might be. And I don't really think about what else other people publish. Once again, I go back to what are things you can control. I'm just writing about what I think is interesting and what I'm excited about, what I can geek out about. A lot of times I'll just sit in on Saturday morning, have my cup of coffee at 7 a.m. and things just flow out. And it's like, boom. Like some of my best posts are just not even thought of. And I just wake up in the morning, I'm like looking at something and I'm looking at all the news from the week. I'm like, oh, let's just put this all together in one thing. And it's just done in 10 minutes. So you may think that it's taken hours and hours and hours, but it's just, a lot of it is just when you keep doing it over and over again, it just really comes together very quickly. And I have a very active mind. It helps me settle it down and just kind of put some thoughts on paper, frankly.
Okay, so I want to quickly say hi to the audience, and then we have a 1 minute fire round. Although I have like so many questions there, but I will keep it almost on time. Okay, hi LinkedIn user, hi everyone. People are talking about like storytelling is a great skill set, and then speed wins, and then hi Benjay. In a row, people are amazed. Where can people find your newsletter? This is like one of the
it's www.what'shot.it.vc. I can't post comments here, for example.
Yeah, I will post it on the comment, but like this is on your LinkedIn bio or something. Like
exactly. It's probably in there somewhere. Yeah, or my Twitter. If you go to my Twitter handle, x.com/edsim, it's also there as well.
Okay, amazing. Okay, we have a 1 minute fire round for you. First of all, what's your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book. Wow. Lessons from History from Will Durant.
Who would you invite to your dinner party?
I still want to meet Warren Buffett. I just think he's an original. He is just the most thoughtful investor that's out there, and I think that'd be amazing.
Amazing. Someone put Benji already put.
Oh, hi Benji. I love
hi. So everyone else is LinkedIn user. Obviously, Benji win today because like everyone else are like just show up as a LinkedIn user. I love Warren Buffett. Please invite me if you ever have dinner with him.
I wish. I love. Yeah, I just love
who made the biggest impact in your career?
Probably my mom and dad.
Are they all VCs?
No, they're immigrants from Korea, right? And my mom and my dad set the standard for, if there's something you believe in, you just work hard, set your goals, and you can make it happen no matter how hard it is. And that's just something that has stuck with me. And I look at founders and I look for that grit, and they provided me with a lot of grit. Because at Boldstart, we had some rough times, right? Raising capital. We can go to that another time, but yeah, you just keep going.
Where can we find you outside of work?
Let's see. I like being with my wife, my kids, my pets. Yeah. I've got 4 pets, 2 dogs, 2 cats.
Oh, wow.
I love CrossFit. My wife and I both do CrossFit together. She's a certified level 1 instructor as well. And then if I'm not doing that, work is kind of like part of my life, right? So they're my friends. I hang out with founders all the time. We're just shooting the shit and catching up. So it kind of all blends together, and from my perspective.
Amazing. I did heard about like you guys do the dates on like workout classes or something. Like that's pretty intense. Yeah. Assuming all your founders are in shape, but maybe that's like a great.
Not all, but I'd like them to be.
Oh God. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a lot of fun chatting with you, and thank you.
Grace, thank you so much. I really had a fun time.
Okay, let me quickly end stream.
Okay.
It ended so fast. Like typically it takes like literally 10 seconds to end. I'm like, oh, this is ending. But like today it like ended like randomly.
You had lots of good questions. You're rapid fire. So this was a lot of fun. By the way, I hope you see that we do things our own way. We're completely different than a lot of people. We just think differently.
Yeah, for sure. I think you said that like very like loud and clear, with like the founder being the resident of like the founder's company. Oh, someone Oh, it says thanks. Okay, so great. A lot of people ask a lot of questions, blah, 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 like, and then I'll like at you if they ask like some thoughtful question. Some people start pitching you, but anyway. So anyway, thank you so much. Are you in Miami right now, or are you?
I'm in New York at the moment. So for the summer, I'm out in New York, and then I'm back in Miami, and then I travel a bunch as well. I'm gonna be all over the. Where are you based?
It's still live.
Oh, where are you based, by the way?
Oh,
What?
sorry.
Oh.
Wait, it is